Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on the physicians and practitioners who are redefining medicine through their integrative, functional, and holistic approach to health and well-being.
I am very excited to welcome Dr. Judson Brewer, an addiction psychiatrist, New York Times bestselling author, and thought leader in the field of habit change and the science of self-mastery. He has over 20 years of experience with mindfulness training and research. Dr. Brewer serves as the Director of Research and Innovation at the Mindfulness Center and Associate Professor in Behavioral and Social Sciences and Psychiatry at Brown University. He is also the Executive Medical Director of Behavioral Health and ShareCare, Inc., as well as a research affiliate at MIT. Thank you for being here with us, Dr. Brewer. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you have emerged as a nationally recognized expert regarding habit change and the science of self-mastery, and appearing on everything from the Today Show, Wall Street Journal, NPR, and more. Could you tell us how you began to focus on behavioral and social science and the habit change specifically in your career? What drew you to this area of research?
Well, there's this joke that research is me search, because when we're interested in something personally, we're more likely to research them professionally. And at the beginning of medical school, I think it was literally my first day of medical school, I sat down and started meditating. I decided, it was a big shift, change in my life, new chapter. And so I wanted to try something else that was new. I was a little stressed at the time, so I figured meditation might be helpful. And I found that over the course of my MD PhD program that I had no idea how my mind worked, and I had no idea that I didn't even know that. So meditation helped me start to understand that. And then two, I started to realize how, just like my patients, I had all of these addictions. Now, certainly, I was in medical school, was in a very privileged position to be able to look at these. But I was realizing that there's this commonality where we all have, our minds work in a certain way that are trying to help us survive. Yet in modern day, our minds get co-opted in so many different ways where we get stuck in habit loops and even addictions. So I decided to become a psychiatrist. Last thing I thought I was going to do, but I decided to become a psychiatrist because I saw that overlap so much with what I was struggling with, where my patients were struggling, and where there weren't a lot of great treatments to help people with habits. And I decided to really just focus my career on helping people change habits, ranging from, hardcore addictions, the typical ones we think of, like heroin and cocaine and alcohol and smoking, to even binge eating and stress eating and social media, are being addicted to our phones.
Yeah, very true, Dr. Brewer. What are some of the most notable realizations or changes in understanding you have had since you began this field?
I would say some of, if not one of the most important things that I learned was that there's a common mechanism that lays down habits. It's this reward-based learning process. It wasn't something that I learned in medical school, and it really underlies all habit formation, ranging from tying our shoes to eating to walking to cocaine. So learning that and seeing how that applied in my clinic was really helpful for me to start to really feel like I could understand where my patients were coming from when it came to them really struggling with breaking a habit or an addiction, because they weren't able to see how their minds were working. And I could help them see how their mind was working based on how I could see how my own mind was working and how I could see the universality of this learning process. So that was probably one of the most important ones. And it in itself also helped me start to see how I could work with helping my patients with anxiety, which I was really struggling with because the medications for anxiety aren't that great. And I didn't have any great tricks up my sleeves for helping patients behaviorally.
Why do you think habit change is so important for clinicians to understand and integrate into their approach with patients?
The vast majority of the unhelpful or unhealthy habits that we have affect our physical and our mental health in profound ways. So whether it's overeating or smoking or even worrying, these are primary drivers that really affect short-term and long-term physical and mental health. So it's really important to be able to work with these core mechanisms to help people overcome habits that really affect their lives in so many ways.
So you will be speaking at the upcoming 29th annual A4M World Congress as a keynote speaker on a presentation titled Unwinding Anxiety: Why Anxiety Levels Spiked During the Pandemic, How We Coped in Unhealthy Ways, and What We Can Do to Break the Cycle. Could you provide us with a preview of this session?
I would be happy to. So anxiety just skyrocketed at the beginning of the pandemic, and there are specific reasons for that. Our brains don't like uncertainty. There was a whole lot of uncertainty. There's still a lot of uncertainty regarding the pandemic. And that just built on already increasing levels of uncertainty, whether it was political, economic, environmental, social, all of these things. So anxiety has been on the rise, and it really spiked during the pandemic, and it's still at pretty high levels. So I'll be talking about how all of this fits together. And I'll also talk about how some of the ways that our brains have tried to cope with this unpleasant feeling of anxiety and worry have led to other unhealthy habits like overeating, like going on social media too much, and so on. And I will finish by talking about how we can actually learn how our minds work so that we can learn to work with our minds. And I'll give people some pragmatic steps that they can follow, and they can also bring into their work lives and their daily lives, so that not only can they overcome any unhealthy habits that they've developed, but they might be able to support others in doing the same.
Hey there, listeners. It's your host of the weekly podcast, Redefining Medicine. I have a question for you. How much time do you spend ordering functional lab tests for your patients? Ordering from multiple lab companies for hundreds of patients can quickly turn into hours of admin time. But there's a new way to order lab tests that I'm excited to share with you. Rupa Health is a tool that lets you order 20 plus specialty labs in a single portal. You can order all tests you normally do from companies like Dutch, Vibrant, Genova, and Great Plains, and so many more. Imagine you're ordering a hormone panel for a patient that includes tests from 3 different labs. You have to log into 3 different websites to place separate orders, and then come back weeks later to check tracking number and download results. Rupa eliminates all of that by having all ordering, tracking, and results in a single place, and they also handle invoices, tracking shipments, automated follow-ups, personalized instructions for completing tests, and so much more. The best part about Rupa, it's free for all practitioners. Go to rupahealth.com, that's RUPA health.com, to join a live demo or sign up to see how it works. Now let's get back to today's show.
Could you share 1 or 2 particular misconceptions about habit change and addiction that you want clinicians to understand?
One of the biggest misconceptions that I see in modern day is around this idea that we just have to have more willpower, and that if we can just have that willpower, that we'll be able to overcome habits or addictions. That's not actually how our brains work. So willpower is more myth than muscle. And really our brains require a simple ingredient, which has nothing to do with willpower, but it's more about awareness. And that awareness is what helps us change habits through updating reward value rather than trying to force ourselves to change. So I think that's really important for people to understand, is that, an addiction or a habit isn't a failure of somebody's willpower. It's more probably a failure of all of us to understand how that habit is set up and how to target that direct mechanism.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brewer. I really can't wait to hear your lecture in Las Vegas in December. It's going to be incredible.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.